Good evening and welcome to our brand new studio here in the Cavan Crystal Hotel on the Dublin Road here in Cavan. And no better way to christen it than to get in an institution for a chat. Well, are you an institution?
No, I should be in one at this stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest this evening is the one and the only, the inimitable, is that a proper word?
You spell it and I'll live it.
Ronan Collins, ladies and gentlemen, joins me. Ronan, of course, you're another one of these people that's done it all.
Not really. You know, I've lasted.
Yeah, all the guests we get coming on say, no, not really. But then you start to hear the story and it unwinds.
I would never look on it as I haven't done it all. I mean, I don't look on anything as an achievement. It's what you do. You know, I'd be a great man for keeping going. Yeah. And I've no interest in stopping. And I was always like that. I was probably at my worst in school, that I'd no interest in that. But things that I liked and things that I liked to do, I would do them with great gusto and try to do my best at them and continue doing them. And then when you really find something that you like to do, you just keep doing it. And there's a lot of, I suppose, self-satisfaction is what if it hasn't satisfied me, then it hasn't been a success.
And let's go right back now to the beginning, right? That must be a drummer thing, that no interest in school, because I had no interest either.
Yeah, I don't know what...
Was it music all the time, Ronan?
Not really. I mean, I didn't come from a musical family or anything. I had an uncle who was a drummer, and one of my earliest memories of being in my granny's house in I think it was Lindsay Road in Glasnevin in Dublin, was there was a set of drums, white Premier kit, and I remember when they were set up, I could play them. I could just play.
Natural flair, yeah.
And then my uncle went away to Canada, and the drum kit was there, and I remember asking about it, and I was probably only about 9 or 10, and I asked about the drum kit. But my father was an army officer, and I think that the drum kit had been secreted away because he didn't want that racket in the house. It's not that he was tough or anything, but he was an army officer.
He was disciplined.
Yeah, and you didn't have drums in the house. And of course, I thought that my father didn't understand me, and I knew that my father understood me perfectly because I am my father. Everything that he did that I swore I'd never do. Of course, they're all the things that I do. You know, so that's where it started, and I always had an interest in music. And then my sister, my oldest sister, only a couple of years older, she had boyfriends, and there were records coming into the house from the Beatles onwards. And I remember one particular record that really, I just thought this was fantastic. It was the Four Tops live in a nightclub in America, and they were amazing. And that's how I discovered Tamla Motown. And then around the same time, I saw Granny's Intentions.
So Tamla Motown then in Ireland then?
It would have been pretty. There wouldn't have been a huge amount of people.
Rare, yeah.
But I do remember that the things that influenced me first were that record, the Four Tops and Tamla Motown, a band called the Dead Centre, who came from, appropriately enough, Glasnevin in Dublin, and they had two guys who later went on to become allies, Jerry O'Donovan and Eamon Gibney, and they played soul music. And I'm talking about 1965, 66. Yeah. Then I saw Granny's Intentions, I think, in 67. And they were doing Tamla Motown. So that with the Beatles and Tamla Motown were the earliest influences. And to be able to hit a drum kit and play anything like that would have been a great dream, And that's all it was.
Did you practice with them then?
No, not at that stage, no, because I didn't have a drum kit. But any time there was a drum kit, a friend of mine up the road had a drum kit, and we had a band, and he wasn't a great drummer, and I wasn't a great front man. So I would try and play the drums, but they were his drums, So I kind of fell back into it accidentally.
But you could sing as well.
Yeah, well, I would have been pretty shy in that respect. And that's how, if I can move on a bit from it, how I became kind of a singer-drummer, because that's what I did, and that's what I did when I started playing regularly in bands. I sang and played. And I was probably a better singer than I was a drummer. I wasn't a bad drummer. I wasn't a great technician. I was a good dance band drummer, good pop drummer.
Yes.
But I loved the singing, but not enough to do it out the front. I didn't have the kind of frontman gene, I was happy to be behind the drum kit and have that as a security blanket, if you like.
But that's all a drummer needs really, is that the solid beat. I seen an interview recently with Steve Gadd, and he said, you can do all your flash things all you like, and as many
Absolutely.
He says, if you can't keep the beat, man, you're not there.
Absolutely, and that's what, particularly Steve Gadd, I mean, he's the maestro and everything, drumming-wise, and he can do anything. But when you listen to American drummers playing on anybody's record, it's really not what they play, it's what they leave out that makes them so good.
Yeah,
you know?
it is.
But they're very good technicians as well. I mean, I was never a great drummer, but I could do what I was there to do. You know, play pop music, and I could do that.
But you got to work, so you were obviously... Yeah. You're not a bad drummer, you know.
No, but it was never about that. It was never about... being the best at what I was doing. It was about enjoying what I was doing. And you know, my lifelong friend, who's still my lifelong friend, we were in kindergarten together, a guy called Cavan, used to say to me that I never appeared to be doing anything I didn't want to do, and that's kind of the way I felt. Somebody'd say, we'll do this, and I said, no, don't want to do that. No, I don't think.
Do you remember the first songs you practiced to when you were drumming?
No.
You don't kind of go back that far?
No, I can't remember back that far at all, you know. I remember thinking that I thought Charlie Watts in the Rolling Stones was a great drummer. I'd like to be able to play like him.
Again, less is more.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, even though I preferred the Beatles over the Rolling Stones, I always felt that Charlie Watts was a better drummer than Ringo. And Ringo hardly plays anymore, you know. Charlie Watts still plays.
Still playing.
He still plays the same way.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
How does he do that after so long?
And interesting, technically, if you ever watch Charlie Watts, is that when he hits the offbeat, he doesn't hit the offbeat on his right hand. He does that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever noticed that. Yeah. And when he hits the offbeat, he just doesn't connect on the right. An interesting little thing, but again, less is more, you know. But the drumming and the singing was great fun, you know.
So what was your first band that you...
We had a band called H Group. Yeah. Another band called The Visitors. And nothing happened.
Great names, though.
Yeah, great fun. And then I kind of fell out of that. I think I broke up when I was 15. And I started DJing in a tennis club. And again, it was all to do with the music. That happened by accident. But the DJing, then I was doing a hall in Ballymun in Dublin. And then I got a job in one of the clubs in town, kind of doing the early part of the night. And then I DJ'd.
Before I left the band? Then. Was it before the band or was it before?
That was after the Visitors and the H Group. And when I was at school, like when I was doing my leaving cert, I think I was doing 3 or 4 nights a week DJing. Which meant the leaving cert suffered. The DJing blossomed. And that was great fun again, and I enjoyed it. And, you know, my mother used to worry about me and why was I out all night. This was after school, when school finished, because I never got what she called a proper job. And she used to be very concerned, thinking that I was out all night. And she knew I didn't drink. And I think she might have thought that I was taking drugs, which I never did. Smoking cigarettes was the worst I ever did.
Yeah. That was your only vice?
Yeah, and it was just a bad habit, a stupid bad habit, as any reformed smoker will tell you.
Well, in them days, it was one of them things, wasn't it?
Yeah, lots of people smoked. So, you know, it was late night. It was showbiz. I thought it was great. You know, stayed in bed all day and.
Well, it was, wasn't it? You know, got
Yeah, and then there was a band in town that I was friendly with called The Others, who were quite a successful band in Dublin, particularly on the south side of Dublin. They had the whole scene wrapped up in tennis clubs and rugby clubs, but they played a bit in town. And I got friendly with them, and there was a party on one night in Sloopy's, the famous Sloopy's in Dublin, and the drummer wasn't well. I think he'd had a few too much to drink, and it was a private party thing. So I played with the band that night, and it was great fun. It was just natural for me to do it and to play. And a few weeks later, then the same drummer was struck down with appendicitis, and I was around and played with the band again, and I stayed with them for 4 years. And
when you went in that first time, did you think, right, I can bluff this?
No.
You just knew you could do it?
We just did it.
Did it for the crack
it was never a cockiness. And it was never of course I can do it. I could do it. It was second nature to me.
Part and parcel.
You know. I could have been much better if I had a practice, but I was too busy playing and singing at the same time and enjoying both of them.
Too busy enjoying it.
Yeah.
Having the crack.
Too busy enjoying it. Yeah. And it was a great band and it was great fun. And then I played in a few pub bands in town, which was also great fun. Great discipline to learn to just completely busk all the time without rehearsal, and make it good and back people who were singing, whether they were the amateurs who got up in the sing-alongs or whether they were professional singers who came in and you had no time for rehearsal, but you knew their stuff anyway. And I just did it all the time for enjoyment. I suppose I always wondered what it would have been like to have been in a show band.
Yeah.
You know, because I had an interest in show bands because I looked at them from afar. And I remembered again, going back to when I was a kid, that there was a guy who lived down the road who was the guitar player of the Cadets.
Oh, yeah.
Eileen Reid and the
Eileen
Cadets.
Reid, yeah.
And I remember thinking, that must be an amazing life, you know. And I never took the chance with that. There were still show bands around. The business had changed a lot, but the people who were still doing well were
so we're talking
still
early
doing very
70s
well.
now.
We're in the 70s now,
Yeah.
Nearly the mid-70s now. And I got a call from Dickie Rock, and he asked me if I joined the band. And
but
I said,
how does that happen, Ronan? How does it?
well, you're around,
Yeah,
you know.
people know.
And when
Because
I was
you say,
working...
You say you weren't a good drummer, but Dickie Rock's not going to have any old drummer.
Well, I wasn't a bad drummer,
Yeah.
you know. You know, Dickie'd never have anybody better than himself.
Yeah.
but he couldn't play the drums. But you were around and you met these people anyway, you know, and I had a reputation among the Dublin bands as being somebody who could sing and play well enough.
Yeah.
The
singing was a big...
The singing was a big
asset, yeah.
Yeah, because I could sing pop songs. And that's how Dickie asked, because Dickie can't, you know, no singer, front man, wants to be doing 2.5 hours a night on their own. You know, they need a backup.
They need the backup.
So he asked me to join the band, and I did. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being with the guys. The guys, terrific guys in the band, good players, and Dickie had big crowds, still doing big crowds, because he had great success that year with Back Home Again.
Yes.
So he that had been another big lift to his career.
The John Denver song.
Yeah, and that was a number one for Dickie, and so there were huge crowds at his gigs, and it was great to play and everything, but I never really adapted to the road thing. And then there was a kind of a crossover period in that when pirate radio had started. Oh yeah. And I remember talking to fellas who were involved in pirate radio, and they remember that I used to DJ, and I went in one day to one of the stations, and I ended up going on for an hour.
Where was it? Which one was it?
Radio ARD.
ARD,
It had been a breakaway from Radio
yeah.
Dublin. And that was a great bit of fun, and I think I did a few more programs after that. But I had to go and be with the band 5 nights a week, you know, so you couldn't commit yourself to it. Not that I wanted to, you know, I was still enjoying the band. Now at this stage, moving on, it was now a living, and I had a mortgage.
It had turned into a job.
Yeah. But an enjoyable job, because when you're playing, you could be playing anywhere, you know. I mean, I remember I spoke to Larry Mullen from U2 many years ago, and I was saying to him, you know, about playing these massive stadiums in America that he played. And he said, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Behind your drum kit, you could be anywhere.
Yeah, you're playing.
Yeah, and you're playing, and particularly when you're a drummer, you're usually in the back, and you're playing there. It's kind of in your own world.
Yeah. I've told people you can see everything that nobody else can see. Yeah. You can see what's going on. Yeah. You can see what all the band is doing. Yeah. The bass.
And of course, the drummer looks at everybody else in the band, and subconsciously he says, "I could do that." I don't know why he's standing there. I could do that. Anyone could do that, but only I can do this. Yeah. But it was great, you know. I mean, it was brilliant. But I tired of the road, and then there was. I just felt maybe it was time to make a change in my life, you know.
It was like we were saying earlier. It's a lot of hanging around, isn't it? It's just.
Yeah, but
nobody gets that. No,
there was the traveling. The traveling was the word. I just felt that, you know, I didn't want to be doing this for the rest of my life. I was only 26, I think, 26 or 27. But I felt like I'd done it now for long enough, and I wanted to do something else. So I left, and I left to go to nothing.
You quit. You just.
Yeah, I remember saying to my wife, "I want to stop doing this," and she said to me, "Well, then stop."
And what did Dickie say? What did the band say?
Well, Dickie was sorry to see me go, but you know, I wanted to stop. I just had enough, and then. Yeah,
so Ronan Collins quits one of the most successful bands in Ireland to do nothing.
To change direction.
Yeah.
But I didn't know which direction it was going to be, you know. So that's what happened. I played a few I got a couple of jobs here. I got a week here with somebody and a couple of gigs there. And then Dickie asked me back because he was doing a TV show in April of 1979. I'd been gone from the band maybe a month, maybe 2 months. And he asked me back because he wanted me to play on this TV show. So I went back and we were out in RTE. And at that time it had been announced that RTE were starting a new radio channel. And they were interviewing and auditioning anybody who turned up.
Literally?
So, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because they didn't know what they wanted or how it was going to be. So we were on a 2-hour break from the TV show. And I walked over to the radio centre. And I said, give me an audition. Because everybody else did. Yeah. So I got an audition.
And what did you have to do? Just sit there and say, this is...
I think I had to bring in a few records and play them, kind of be a DJ. So I did that, and then they spoke to me very seriously, very serious RTE, civil service kind of thing.
Coming at you.
And then I got a job, yeah. I was part of the Coming At You in end of May of 1979, 31st of May.
I remember it kicking off, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. Nobody gets it now.
It was
huge.
It was huge, and within a year, we were like pop stars because we started doing discos all around the country.
I remember it, yeah. I remember it well.
And because I'd done a bit of travelling, and I said I didn't mind doing it, and paid a few quid, and it was great fun to do it. I was married at this stage, and I remember saying to my wife when I got the job, God, if I got 18 months or 2 years out of this, it'd be great. And I kind of hark back to when I was a kid again, because I liked the radio and I liked listening to the radio, and I'd often thought that being on the radio might be great. And I'd heard Larry Gogan in his very early days, and you heard people like, Mike Murphy and Brendan Balfe, and now I was working in the same place as those people. Yeah, you're one of them. And they were great.
Like a dream come true.
Yeah, well, I'd never really dreamed of it when I was a kid. It was more music and probably being rich and famous.
Yeah.
And neither of which you really achieve. I mean, fame is a very transient thing. Notoriety is probably a better description than fame.
It's a fickle mistress.
Yeah,
but your love of music got you onto this.
The music was the drive all the time. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was a great opportunity, and I'm not sure I recognised the opportunity again when I started in Radio 2 again, because I was married and I needed to work to pay the mortgage and pay the bills.
You started off on the breakfast show?
No, I started off in the afternoons. I did the afternoons for 15 months. And then I went to the breakfast show. And at the time, of course, it was always said that you could make your name for yourself, because that was a big thing on commercial radio in England, was the breakfast shows.
It's the one, it's the prime one, isn't it?
And Mike Murphy was doing really well on Radio 1 at the time. So it was a tough one to do, but I did it for 5 years.
That's 7 in the morning till 9.
It was 6:30 to 9.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, and some mornings 6 for whatever reason. But I didn't mind that. It was tough on my family, and I'm not sure that I saw at the time that I was living a kind of a selfish lifestyle, because if you weren't working at night, you'd go to bed early. You'd get up at 5 o'clock. You'd go in and do your program. Then I'd go and have breakfast. And then I'd started playing golf. And that's addictive. And if the weather was nice, you'd go out and play golf. And then I'd go home and I'd sit down and I'd fall asleep. And then I'd have dinner with my wife and kids. And then I'd sit down and fall asleep. And my wife would wake me up at 9 o'clock and I'd go to bed.
Yeah,
and we weren't doing anything.
No, yeah. But
I was working, and then I was doing gigs, maybe 3 or 4 nights a week, kind of Thursday to Sunday. So you weren't seeing a lot of your family, and you were missing things. But I didn't see it because it was important. And thankfully, I recognised it after about 4 to 4.5 years on the breakfast show. And I remember talking with my boss saying, I'm not sure I can do this for very much longer. And then out of the blue, an offer came from RTE Radio 1 to go on there. And then nobody had ever done that, even in the 5 or 6 years. Nobody had ever moved from Radio 2, now 2FM, to Radio 1. So I made the move. And that was great because that kind of gave me, it took you out of being a pop DJ to being a radio presenter.
Yeah, which is a huge difference.
Even though I presented music programs, and I continued to do that. I did kind of went off on a bit of a tangent between 87 and 90. You had a television career
in the middle of all this.
Yeah, the TV started in 84. That was by accident. You know, I had no great desire to be on television. I probably had the same desire to be on television then as I have now, except now it's even less. I've no interest in a television career. Yeah. Even though I worked on television for a long, long time, and it started with a cabaret kind of show, presenting that, and then I did a game show, which was hugely successful for 10 years, Play the Game, with Derek Davis and Twink. But it had nothing to do with music, but it was entertainment, and, you know...
But it was good crack, I'm sure it was.
It was good fun to do, yeah, but it was a very good career move, because it kind of, you know, as the way everything is now, it was less important then, but it was still good if you could get a profile. Yes, yeah. And if people knew who you were, it helped a lot in everything. Now, of course, it's all about having a profile and everybody knowing who you are, and kids wanting to be famous. And when I meet kids now and they say, "Oh, you worked on television." Yeah. Must have been great being famous. And I say, "Well, what do you want to do?" And they say, "Oh, I want to be famous." Yeah. And I say, "Well, don't have that thought until you finish the sentence." And I say, "What do you mean? You want to be famous for what?" Yeah. You know, just being on television and people knowing your face is notoriety. Yeah. They know who you are. Famous when you achieve something. And
when you really get there.
Yeah, when you deliver on something and everything. But you become well known, and it's great fun. And I enjoyed it, but I was always so lucky that I had the cushion of the radio program, which I always enjoyed. I loved it. And then in the late 80s, when costing started to be very important, I remember my boss saying to me, "It'd be great if we could get you to become a one-man operation," because in the radio studios in RTE, I was on the air there, and you twiddled a few knobs, but there was a sound operator outside, and a producer, and a broadcasting assistant. And all of these people cost money to do things, and money had become a hugely important thing in terms of running these services. So as far back as 1990, I became a producer, presenter. And ever since, I've worked completely on my own on radio. I have no staff.
No, do you just
absolutely no.
So when we hear you at 12 o'clock every day now...
It's only me.
It's only you?
Me in a room. And I work all the equipment, and I've set everything up and do everything. And you
produce it as in pick all the songs?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely.
And your love affair with Linda Ronstadt continues?
Yeah, poor Linda.
To this day.
Yeah. We never met. Had a chance to meet. I've adored Linda Ronstadt since I first heard her. I think at about 1969, I think it was. It may have been a little later than that, and something she'd done in 69. But she sang with a band called the Stone Ponies, who later became
the
Eagles, really, you know. Half them went off. A couple of them, the original Stone Ponies, went off with Ricky Nelson, got killed in a plane crash. But they became the Eagles, and she had that close association. But I remember being absolutely enthralled with her voice and how she sang so clearly. And then, of course, I saw pictures of her.
Gorgeous. And
she was absolutely stunning looking girl. And she was great. And I just followed her career and listened to her music. And I was completely and utterly infatuated with how she sang. And she sang everything. Like, she did the Pirates of Penzance on Broadway, and she was absolutely superb. And then what really cemented my love for Linda Ronstadt and her vocal prowess was when she did 2 Mexican folk albums. Now, there were Mexican folk songs done in a mariachi kind of a style with that Herb Alpert kind of
heard them, yeah.
And I don't speak, as the fella says, I don't speak Mexican. I don't speak Spanish. But I understood these songs perfectly because of the way she sang them, the way she told the story. And of course I looked and I got the words in English and I looked into them and everything. But I was absolutely, the first time I was ever completely and utterly enthralled by something that I shouldn't have been enthralled by, because it was a style of music that I knew nothing about and I had no affinity for before. Just out of the blue, it came because of her voice.
Is that not the power of music?
You know?
Just
absolutely.
Has that
absolutely, yeah.
Has that power?
Yeah, but to listen to music through the years and to like music and to be influenced by certain styles of music, but then to find something after many years of listening that absolutely hits you between the eyes and you say, this is amazing. And what was amazing about it was her.
Yeah.
How she sang, how she delivered the songs, the way she sang them. And completely and utterly taken. I've never been taken by anybody.
Yeah. And
their vocal ability and the warmth in their voice and the feeling in their voices as much as I have by her. And you know, Linda in recent years, she's a very big girl. She's has a self-confessed weight problem. And her voice just continued for so long until that terrible twist of fate. With Parkinson's.
Yeah, I seen her on.
It has affected her vocal ability. And she said, I can no longer sing. And she explained afterwards that she can no longer sing, and this was what I found extraordinary. She could no longer sing to her own satisfaction.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? You know,
and that's what I used to think, that I did so many things through my life for my own satisfaction, which is kind of selfish. But you realize that if you're not as good doing something as you once did it, well, then stop.
That's the time to quit. Yeah.
And that's a very difficult thing to happen. Now, she probably had the excuse, if I could be very flippant, of Parkinson's. I mean, she's been struck with Parkinson's. But she seems to be philosophical about it.
She had another amazing album too that she did with Nelson Riddle.
Yeah, The Lush Life.
One. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, that was amazing stuff. But her versatility was incredible. And
I've heard she sang Chuck Berry, living in the USA and all that. It's fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah. She did all those songs, you know. But she's part of a great American vocal tradition.
Yeah.
Of just being natural, an untrained singer. And she could still go into different styles. Like I said, being on Broadway in The Pirates of Penzance. Emmylou Harris is a bit like that too. She's just got an angelic voice. And then Dolly Parton, who's kind of become like a parody of Dolly Parton.
Herself, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But, and then when the three of them were together, it was electric.
How do you get the show together? This is I listen every day and I'm thinking...
What I do on radio?
Yeah. It's a very eclectic mix you have.
Yeah, but it's haphazard. But it's music, you see. There's no pigeonholes in the studio.
Yeah. But are you prepped before you go in, or do you go,
Sometimes I will decide on the day that the best thing to do with the running order is tear it up and do it. It's no big deal because working in radio studios now, everything's pretty much available to you. You know, music databases, and you can get them quickly. There's a template there. A lot of music, most of what I play is suggested by the listeners. Now, I say suggested rather than requested because somebody might request something, and I may have played it the other day, or it may not fit for the day that's in it. But what they've suggested, or what they've requested, would suggest something else. And I will go with that. I'm very conscious that with the Radio 1 audience, that melody it sounds so old-fashioned, but it's very important that things are melodic. I like things to be bright and upbeat. I don't like things to be downbeat on the day. I follow hours of news on Radio 1. Yeah. And sometimes it's difficult to know exactly what to do at 12 o'clock because the mood that has been set in the previous 15 or 20 minutes might be very somber. Yeah. You know, I was on the same day that many things have happened in the world.
But it's a welcome release, surely.
But when the thing happened in Paris recently, the Charlie Hebdo thing, I had to come on at 12 o'clock and be bright and breezy because that's what I'm there for, and to change the mood. Yeah. But you can't just go, you know, it has to be a kind of a gradual change. And that's what my job is to create a different mood to the news. And so I do that as a familiar person. I mean, I've been around for years, and most people are familiar with who I am. And the music has to reflect that change and the mood for the day. And what better music to have than music that people have suggested or guided you towards, you know.
That makes you smile.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think if you can do that, and if you can do it just once in the hour, and I'm only on for an hour, if you can do it just once in the hour, Well, if you do it for one person, maybe people will smile at the other bit.
Is that hour fly? Does it just
oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the weeks fly.
Yeah.
The weeks fly. It is a job, but it's not a chore.
Yeah,
it's never a chore.
Which is the beauty. Yeah.
It's enjoyable to do. Sometimes I feel a little alienated in the fact that, you know, I'm the only music program on daytime Radio 1. There are other programs that have a lighter element to them, but they don't feature music. And sometimes I feel it's a heavy burden sometimes to fulfill all the criteria that you need to fulfill, you know, to make sure that there's a fair balance on the music and the styles of music, that you don't always play what you're interested in yourself. Always be conscious of the listener. And this is the thing about radio, and you said about an eclectic mix. I remember visiting people's houses, and whether they were friends, who maybe were married couple, families, or I went into their houses, and brothers and sisters and their mum and dad were there, and I'd always look at the record collection.
Yeah.
And you invariably find South Pacific or the Mikado. You'd probably find the Clancy Brothers. You could find Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin. And these are the years I'm talking about, going back.
I know, yeah.
And I still believe it is that way now, in a home. You know, if the kids are there, they might like One Direction, or if they're a little older, they might have liked Take That, and they still like Take That. And then, you know, the son might like The Cure.
Yes.
But he might also like Johnny Cash. And there's probably also a soundtrack album there. And the soundtrack album is probably South Pacific or The Sound of Music.
Oh, yeah, South Pacific.
So me going on a radio program and being eclectic just reflects, I believe, what happens in people's houses, that, you know, it's not all one kind of music, it's music. And I've always had that in my head.
That's one of the urban myths that goes around is that 3/4 of the homes in Ireland have a copy of the beautiful South's greatest hits, which incorporates everything, because I
never heard that. That's interesting. Yeah. The beautiful South. Yeah, well, there, and they kind of encompass all kinds of styles.
Exactly.
You know?
It's pop and it's political and everything.
Yeah.
But do you think there's...
As long as you're very careful which versions of the songs you play on the radio. They have what we used to call the LP version.
Yeah. And I've heard it. And it's brilliant.
It's embarrassing.
You didn't accidentally play it by any chance?
I probably did, yeah. Yeah, I remember playing somebody else, and it was a great thing in the early days of YouTube, I think, and it got on YouTube. My voice was on YouTube, and this song came on, and the guy was effing and blind, and I came on and said, "Oh dear."
Oh yeah.
You know, well, what can you do?
Do you think there's too much talk on radio? You take it round anywhere. There's no music till you come on.
Yeah, I think there's a myth that we have music radio stations in Ireland.
No, there's none.
I think if I was to drive from Dublin, say, to the southwest of Ireland any morning, if I was to leave Dublin at 9 o'clock and I was to check all the local stations in Dublin and then all the local stations as I went through the different counties, they're all talking.
All talk.
Yeah. It's quite extraordinary that I did a survey myself and I just checked to see who plays the most music in an hour on any radio station in Dublin, and that includes RTE Radio 1 and 2 FM. And I do.
Yeah.
It's quite extraordinary.
Music. Yeah, it is, yeah.
Because even though I have furniture in the program, like Joe Duffy comes in and does a plug and we take the weather and we do things. But these are things, this is the other thing that's a part of Radio 1, you know. But I still play more. I would get 10 records in an hour, whereas most of the other stations are so busy talking and doing competitions and talking to each other and zoo radio. And that's fine. There's room for all that, but don't call yourself a music station if you're not playing music.
No, I've had this discussion
and then there's the other thing about the commercial stations is that the rotation is way too narrow. You know, I might hear a commercial radio station in Dublin while I'm flicking through the buttons in the car, as I would at 9:15 or 9:30 in the morning, and I might hear a track, and I might do the same then that evening if I'm going out with my wife, and I'll hear 2 of the same tracks I heard that day. You know,
what's the fault of that? Is that playlisting or is it?
Yeah, formatting.
Yeah,
rotation.
Why is it? Is it
because
do the record companies own?
No, it's not the record companies at all. It's I believe it's
Laziness?
It's a style. It's a formula that they have. Format radio. They say it works. They say that people don't listen to the radio 8 hours a day, so they only listen to it in sections. I mean, they do it on RTE Radio 1 in Morning Ireland.
Yeah.
They'll repeat an item they had at 7:10. They repeat it again at 20 to 9. You know.
And Sky News is the same on telly.
Yeah. So that's what, you know, and that's why people move around so much now, you know. And but look, it's been great. I mean, through 36 years on daily radio, I don't feel like I'm doing anything an awful lot different than I did at the beginning. Because if I've been allowed to do anything, I've been allowed to just do it my own way.
Be yourself.
And it's been fantastic.
Which is
you know?
the trick, isn't it? You know, you can...
Yeah.
It's a winning formula.
Yeah, I remember a producer saying to me at the beginning, 36 years ago, I said, what way should I do this? And he said, do it the way you think you should do it yourself. And then tomorrow when you come in and you have to do it again, you won't have to wonder what way you did it yesterday, because if you do it your way,
it's there all the time.
Done, yeah. Which great words of wisdom, you know.
But now you've come full circle from 1976 to 2015 with the Showband show.
Yeah, that's great fun. Yeah, the live gigs.
On the road again, as Willie would say.
Yeah. We just do it for a couple of months in the winter time. I started, the show bands had been forgotten about, and I remember that...
do you think that's a sin?
Well, in a way it is.
They were vilified for years.
Well, they were really vilified about 10 years ago. I think attention was given to Bono and Bob Geldof particularly, who both kind of... Bob Geldof said it was... that show bands were like the devil in disguise or something. I think Bono says it was the dark years for music in Ireland. And I kind of felt they were talking about something they knew nothing about. They'd never seen a show band, and they didn't really delve into what it was. I mean, all styles of music and presentation can get a bad name along the line for good reason and for no reason. But the show band thing was a phenomenon of its time in Ireland. I mean, there was no television. There were no record shops to speak of. The Beatles hadn't happened. This is the beginning of the show bands.
Yeah.
It was very, very different then. And show bands were accused of being jukeboxes, and that's exactly what they were. That's how people heard music.
That's exactly what it's.
And that continued for a long time in the 60s. I mean, I heard music through Granny's Intentions and Brush Shields and lots of bands that I heard in the 60s. And the show bands had been doing it all around the country before that. But it was an Irish phenomenon. And a lot of what they recorded actually wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And I got in after Bono and Bob Geldof. I mean, I never confronted them about it because I never got the opportunity.
Would you?
No.
But they're just...
And I'd say Bono would laugh or Bob Geldof would laugh.
But they started in bands that were anti-music. You know, they were...
I saw Bono... I never saw them in the Dandelion Green. I don't remember where I saw them. God, they were awful. But I still said to myself, geez, they're awful. But your man has something.
Charisma.
Yeah. So it's about more than the music sometimes. And of course, you two have become about more than the music, you know. And Bob Geldof then as the same. No, I wouldn't confront them now because I got an interest in it and got other people interested, and we played show band records and I did a couple of things. And then I did a few shows and brought in some of the stars of the show bands, and of course there's less of them now all the time.
Yeah, of course.
And Dickie and Brendan are still there. Joe Dolan is gone, Butch Moore is gone, Brendan O'Brien is gone, and they were the big stars of the show band era. So that's 5 I've mentioned. Only 2 left.
But they were international. You know, they had.
Well, Joe became the international star, of course, and almost reluctantly. Dickie probably could have been, but he was very secure at home here and liked to be popular. And then Brendan did the Vegas thing and all. But they were great performers and they recorded very well. And the whole thing about the show bands was it was a great bit of fun. And there was an audience out there who felt like nobody else was catering for them. They didn't get television. They didn't understand what was on the radio, and they liked the old show band thing. So when we brought out Reeling in the Show Band years, 5 years ago, we kind of tapped into a market that was there.
And it's still there.
Yeah, and it's great fun to do. Now, I wouldn't want to be doing it 12 months of the year.
Well, it's proof that it's still there because you have this extensive tour now at the moment.
Yep.
That's gone the length and breadth of the country.
Yep. And it's great fun. But we've great people on it. We're a terrific band who they're just great. The stars we've had in it through the years, the show band stars, we've had Dickie and Brendan a couple of times. This year we've Rolly Daniels and Eileen Reid, who hasn't done a show band revival thing ever. And we've Paddy Cole. Paddy is a great example of the ability of the sidemen in show bands. A sax player, very good player. But Paddy's much more than that. He's a musician and an entertainer and a personality. One of the best known people in the country. Absolutely. And all of that from a show band. And he's great. He's a great act to have on the show. I was talking to him about it the other night, and I said to him, you're in the perfect position on this show. He closes the first half. And he leaves people dying to come back for the second half.
Which is what it's all about.
That's exactly what it's all about, you know. And it's great fun to do. And, I compare the show, but I sing a few songs. I sing a few Joe songs. And I've done a show called Joe Dolan's Songs, because I don't believe that Joe's songs should be forgotten about. And you can create an illusion very easy. People think that, God, you sing as high as Joe. No, I don't. But you sing the songs.
Joe is unique.
And you do it in the style that Joe did it, not as high as he did it. And they were great songs, and he was a smashing guy. As are all the stars of the thing been. So there's been lots of things around. I mean, you're saying that I've come full circle. I hope not. I hope the circle's not complete yet.
Well, the circle be.
I'm not ready. I'm not. I think I don't want the circle to be joined up.
Keep it going.
Just yet. At the same time, I don't see myself doing these things forever. I didn't think I'd still be doing it now. I always thought that when I was 60, I'd stop. But when 60 came, I didn't want to stop. It would be a terribly unnatural thing to do. And I'm 62 now, and I see no reason to stop. And people say, do you do it for the money? Do you do it for the love of it? No, it's what I do.
It's what you do, yeah.
It's what you do. Yeah. And, some of my friends and contemporaries are retired, and good luck to them. And they were glad to get out of their jobs, and they felt that the 40 years they'd given to this, that, or the other was enough. And now it was time for themselves. I've been very lucky. It's always been for myself anyway. I mean, I've always felt that way. That the work that I've done, I've never felt it was, that you're working for somebody else or somebody else is getting the benefit out of it. It's what I do.
It's what you do. And
I love doing it. And I still love when somebody says, I heard you playing something on the radio the other day. God, it was great. Yeah. Or somebody at this show comes along and says, we really had a great time. And then I always remember, and I'm humbled by the biggest compliment I was ever paid. I'd been out on the tear with my wife on a meal one night, a few years ago. And when I gave up smoking, I got a great love for garlic. Yeah. So this particular morning, anyway, I was going to work, and I knew that I was smelling like a garlic plant. So I stopped at a shop, and I walked into the shop, and there was a gentleman over on the right-hand side being served by one girl, and I went up to the other girl, and I just said, can I have a packet of Polo Mints? And the man on the right-hand side turned around, and he had a guide dog and a white stick. And he said, that's Ronan Collins. And that was the best.
Fantastic.
I went out into my car, and I was highly moved.
Yeah.
And I just thought,
the power.
Jesus, if I never made an impression on anybody in my life, that man knew who I was, and he couldn't see me. I was knocked out with that.
Fantastic.
And I love that thought. I love that thought. And I carry that thought with me because I was flattered.
Yeah,
I was moved, everything. And I didn't get a chance to say anything. I just said to him, yes, it is. And I would like to say thank you to him, because it was a huge realization that on the days when you think nobody's listening, nobody's looking at you, or nobody cares, I'll remember him.
Yeah, fantastic.
That was brilliant.
Any idea what's next?
No, I'm going to be a grandfather And that's all consuming in my head at the moment.
That's gonna.
My daughter's expecting a baby, and one of my daughters is expecting a baby in the next 10 days. So that's next. And I'm told by all my friends or anybody that I mentioned it to that it's a huge life changer. So that's probably
the next chapter.
Yeah, and I don't know what that's going to do to me. Personally, I just hope it makes me better. I'm down for another go with children, and I believe this is the chance you get. Yeah. You know, to do all the things that I should have done before. And of course, with the advantage of being able to hand them back.
You get them on loan.
Yeah, well, that's with your own children too. You only have a loan of them. You only get one go. So professionally, I don't know what's next. I think I'll be on the radio for, well, I don't think there's any plans to make any changes this year. But I've no plans to make plans or make changes.
What happens.
You know? Yeah. If I wake up tomorrow and I feel like it's a chore, then I'll go in and say, I don't want to do this
that is
anymore.
the time to.
But that hasn't happened yet.
Before we go, I just have to mention that you put manners on Louis' watch.
My argument at the time was I said, what a hugely disappointing record to come from these kids who've been promised the sun, moon and stars, and they're going to try and launch them on this. And like an idiot, I went on Liveline because somebody had complained that it wasn't like me to be downbeat about something like that. And I said, well, I wasn't being downbeat. I said, I'm just feeling disappointed for the kids in the band because I think it's a pretty inferior product to launch them on. And then they brought Louis on, and Louis lambasted me. And I let him. And the more he lambasted me, the bigger the hole got for Louis.
He just fell into it.
So I just said, fair enough, Louis. But, you know, Louis watches. Look at him now. I mean, he's a, I suppose, a multi-millionaire.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm still doing what I do. That's great.
But who's the happiest?
Don't know. I'm sure Louis is very happy. I'm very happy.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about his happiness. And, you know, I still feel very at ease with myself. Yeah. You know, very comfortable with myself.
I can tell you now, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Great talking to you.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And
is this on television?
Yeah. Well, somebody's watching us. So
well, there's always somebody's
watching, and it's been.
No, it's been a pleasure.
Been fantastic.
Sometimes I'd like to talk about something else instead of me. Maybe.
No, because you're a fascinating subject.
Well, thank you.
And as I said at the beginning, an institution, whether you like it or not, that's where you are.
Yep, that happens.
You're in the same category. You're an institution. Everybody knows Ronan Collins.
And it's been very nice. And if they announced on a Wednesday that I was going and wouldn't be there next Monday, there would be a huge outcry. And by Monday, there'll be somebody else in the job. Yeah. So, you know, as long as you understand where you are in the thing, it's not about the conclusion. Yeah. It's about the journey. And the journey's still on. And it's great. It really is. It's fantastic. I mean, to think that I can come up to Cavan and meet you and you say, come on, we're going to have a chat. Yeah. That's a nice compliment. Oh, yeah. I've enjoyed it.
We couldn't wait to get you on when we heard you were coming, and we said, we're going to get everything to get you here and find out the inner secrets. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest this evening has been, as I said at the beginning, the inimitable Ronan Collins. Ladies and gentlemen, from the Green Room, thank you very much.